Right there. So I want to try to demonstrate some thoughts I have taken from observing the news the last several months and the protests and deaths and different ideologies that seem to be combating, coming up against each other. Um, so what we're told, I think this is probably pretty true, is that we have this in America, we have this left and right paradigm. I'm just going to do this in Illustrator because I'm comfortable working in Illustrator, and hopefully it'll make sense. Probably won't look all that refined by the time I'm done, but I think it'll make sense. So this is what we're told. We're told that we have a left and a right. This would be left over here would be Democrats typically, and right over here would be Republicans. And as the narrative and the rhetoric has gotten increasingly sort of all or nothing, we've had this sort of rise of what people on the right call the alt-left and what people on the right call, or the left call the alt-right. And so these are really designed to kind of even make it appear that these are pushed even farther apart. And that these things continue to really get pushed. And I think what's also implied in this is it becomes a scale of right and wrong. So there's moral things assigned to this. And if you listen to the media, the mainstream media, they would want you to believe that this scale here of right and wrong, that alt-right, or as we've heard recently, neo-Nazi, is wrong. And because it's wrong, the supposed opposite of it, alt-left or anti-fascist, is right. It's correct. So these are sort of the implicit sort of moral judgments that are casually, but I think deliberately, assigned to the debate. And listening to my kids come home and talk about what they hear in school, it seems that this is being perpetuated in the classroom as well. And I don't really buy into this, and I want to present a different perspective to hopefully open some dialogue. I'm going to remove the moral implications for now, or at least the assigning of moral value to those for now. And I'm going to rename the alt-left as communism, and I'm going to name the alt-right as National Socialism. Okay. Now, throughout America's history, both of these would have been deemed wrong. I mean, America, we fought communism in the Cold War against Russia, and we fought National Socialism, or the Nazis, in World War II. So we're gonna put these in here, and maybe I'll try. Let me try. Maybe I'll just try circles. Let me see if circles work. So the alt-left becomes communism, and the alt-right becomes socialism. And not only is this true in America today, but if you go to Netflix, in fact, I'll open up a browser. Let me close out that one and close out. Where is my? There we go. Go to Netflix. World War II in color. If you have Netflix, I'd encourage you to watch this. You can watch it on Netflix. It's streaming right now. And I actually posted this on my Twitter feed a couple days ago. A clip from here. And I said, watch closely, listen carefully, let's not repeat this sad pattern, please. And if you turn up the volume and you listen, he says that communists, there was an uptick in violent street violence between communists and National Socialists. And as you watch that documentary, the same thing happened in Italy, the same thing happened in Spain during World War II, where you had these groups, one identifying as communists, one identifying as National Socialists, coming together and conflicting, rioting, being violent against each other. And if we just simply, again, remind what this is, alt-left and alt-right. And I think, to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to center them, just to kind of keep the titles centered as I do this. So keep in mind, so it's alt-right and alt-left. And I'm arguing that alt-left is communism, alt-right is National Socialism. Then we have to ask ourselves, what do these things have in common? And the more I've thought about this, and I've been organizing sketches of kind of how these ideas fit together, there is thinking that communism, you have to have, I guess, what you would call right think. You have to think correctly to be part of this group, the communist group. You have to have the correct thinking. Over here, if you're going to extrapolate this out to the Nazi Party, you have to have the right DNA or the right ethnicity. And really, I think those are the only two things that separate historically communism from National Socialism. They're both groups. They're both collectivist movements. One, you have to think rightly, have the right thoughts to be included in this circle, communism, and in National Socialism, you have to have the right DNA or the right ethnicity to be included. Which leads to, I think, the next classification here, next realization, is that we can put a broader circle around these and ask ourselves, well, this historically would fall in, bring this to the front, maybe give it a, I don't know, a fill of white and an opacity of 90, just to kind of show how these are coming together. Really, what this would become is, in the bigger picture, this would be called, both of these would fit under collectivism. And I think the main ethic in collectivism is you're either in the group or you're out of the group. And we've seen that play out throughout history in very bad ways. You either are Jewish or you're not Jewish. If you're Jewish, you're on a train to a concentration camp, and if you're not Jewish, well then you're fine. Or perhaps in Russia, you either are pro-Stalin or you are against Stalin. And if you're against, you go to the slave labor camps in Siberia, or you were shot or killed. So this is really, I think, the truth of the matter of what's going on here. So instead of this left-right thing with a supposedly, remember I had the right, morally right, and morally wrong over here, and they were supposedly warring against each other. I think the proper way to view them is that they both fall in collectivism. So then the question becomes, well, is collectivism wrong? And how has collectivism played out throughout history? And I think you can even do a bigger one here. And we can say that inside of that, let me see here. I think we probably, inside of that, this would take on, collectivism would take on, it would be part of what we would call in a bigger realm, authoritarianism, or totalitarian. Okay. So then this debate of left-right, alt-right versus alt-left, they get grouped into being collectivist. And collectivism is historically, you look at Stalin, you look at Mussolini, you look at Chavez, you look at Mao, you look at Ceausescu in Romania, Hitler, obviously. You have authoritarian, totalitarian societies that demand acquiescence to their belief system and total allegiance to them. I think viewing it this way really shifts the debate, because then the debate no longer is, well, are you on the supposed left or the supposed right? But no, you see that they are in reality authoritarian and they're totalitarian. So then that really begs the question, well, then what's the alternative? And I'm not going to put a thing on left or right, because I don't want to imply that the alternative is to the left or to the right of this. It's just completely outside. It's completely outside the realm of authoritarianism and totalitarian governments, and it is individualism. And it's individualism that America is built upon, at least the ideally. Individualism, you have free markets, you have the whole construct of a constitutional republic, you have the whole foundation of the rule of law, or as old-timer Latin people would say, lex rex, law is king. And this is really where I've begun to discuss with people. So they want to get in these, they want to pigeonhole you. Are you anti-Nazi? Well, yeah, I'm anti-Nazi. Okay, well then that must mean that you are with our side. And you saw this on Twitter, not that I bore you with these things, but you're gonna make me log in to view my replies? Stupid Twitter. Let me see here. Now the question is can I remember my Twitter password off the top of my head? Nope. Try again. There we go. So I got into this conversation the other day with this gentleman on Twitter, goes by the username of DJ Word, and I made the tweet. I posted the tweet. I made the tweet. I tweeted, let me get this straight. Antifa, aka Stalinists, are fighting neo-Nazis, aka Hitler Youth, and we're all just supposed to pick a side. And then I subtweeted my own tweet, and I said, yeah, how about neither? Well, that prompted a conversation to start with DJ Word. He said, I picked sides. The false narrative was that this was a conflict between violent people. No good on Nazi side, lots of good on other. So he says he picked sides. Well, okay, that's fine, but he picked the communist side, is what it would boil down to. So he's very confident and seems quite assured of himself that he has picked the communist side, because he's picked the other. He's clearly said that he has not picked the Nazi side. So, okay, well, the non-Nazi side, the alt-left, is the communist side. So he's fine with that. He seems to be fine with that. And lots of good, false narrative that this was a conflict between violent people, no good on Nazi side, lots of good on the other. Well, if he's picked the communist side, he's really kind of in a bind to historically prove that there's lots of good on the other side. I mean, just as I mentioned previously, I mean, let's list some communists. We have Stalin, we have Chavez, we have, I don't even know how to spell Ceausescu, so I'll just put Romania. We have Mao. I mean, just off the top of my head, between Stalin and Mao, you're looking at probably 125 million deaths of people who did not go along, who did not fit in their group. So you did not fit in the group of communism, and between Stalin and Mao alone, you have 125 million people dead because of that. So there's a lot of burden of proof for him to defend that there's lots of good on the other side. Now, no good on the Nazi side. I mean, that's pretty self-evident. I mean, you know, if you want to look at National Socialists, you have Hitler, terrible. You have, can I even spell Mussolini? I'm not sure if that's how you spell it. Put Italy. You have Hitler and Mussolini. So clearly that statement is fine. I mean, no good on the Nazi side. That's very evident. I have no issue with that. But to insist that there is lots of good on the other and then post this picture of what, you know, I'm assuming these are the other side. That's all fine and dandy, but when we're dealing with the historicity, the historical realities of these two ideologies playing out in the world, it's hard to justify that there's lots of good between Stalin, Chavez, Romania, Ceausescu, Mao. We could probably even put Che, which is going to freak out a lot of college students. We could put, who's the guy, Castro. And there's lots of communists we could list here that have just been horrible. Horrible, horrible. So again, this goes back to neither of these are right. Both of them are bad because, moving up the thought process here, because they are part of, let me get these two guys, lock those. Whoops. Because, come on. I said I like using Illustrator and I look like a complete noob. Because they're part of collectivism. They both believe in collectivism. You're either in the group or you're out of the group. And if you're in the group, you're good. If you're out of the group, you're bad. And that is a horrible, horrible ideology. So I reject both of them, just like I said. And he went on to question me and tell me that it was false equivalency and high-level false equivalency, show me good guys on the other side. Well, I never said I was on the other side, so no, I can't show you good guys on your other side, which is National Socialism. They're horrible. Hitler, Mussolini, terrible people. Current neo-Nazis, terrible people. Terrible ideology. Then he accuses me that my argument is inaccurate. It's not based upon facts. Well, I don't know how factual. I don't know what other facts you need. I mean, there's Stalin, there's Chavez, there's Ceausescu, Mao, Che, Castro, there's Hitler, Italy. I mean, we have a long track record of history books showing how communism has played out and how National Socialism has played out, and they've both been atrocious. And then he says there's no such thing as the alt-left. It's made up by Trump and the right-wing movement. Antifa is terribly small with little power, unlike president and alt-right. Well, if that's the case, another guy decided to chime in and say, well, Antifa is not small. They are in virtually every other country and had so much power that during the G20, the German police got overpowered. And he says, well, okay, I concede I don't like their response, Antifa's response, but these people aren't killing people in USA. I'm against killers. Oh, so as long as communists aren't killing people in the United States, the ideology is fine. We have 100 years Oh, and I mean, we could probably even put Lenin above Stalin. So you have 100+ years of communists murdering millions, tens of millions of people, over 100 million people all put together. But as long as they're not killing people in the USA, we're fine. Just absolutely, just misguided. So my point is that both of these are collectivists. They're collectivism. And the fault with collectivism is that you're either in the group or you're out of the group. If you're in, you're accepted. If you're out, we will use any means necessary to resist you. And I take that from a YouTube clip of a guy, V, that I watched the other day, where he commented on a CNN interview that CNN did with Antifa members out in Berkeley. And that's what they said. They said, we will use any means necessary. Which harkens back to, I'll post it later, but there's a tweet by the director of the International Human Rights Group saying that removing the Confederate statues is not enough. In my experience in Russia, you must also remove the people who would want to bring the statues back later. In other words, the director of the International Human Rights Association is on Twitter sort of veiledly calling for genocide, worst case, or mass imprisonment or ostracization on the other side. Horrible. So the reason, and this is where they both have in common, I guess we'll just try to make this thing super big right now, is they both have this big circle of being totalitarian and authoritarian. And this is how I am framing the argument. This is how I understand the argument. And so when people ask me, are you on the alt-left or the alt-right, I say neither. And this is my reasoning behind why I'm neither. Because they're both part of collectivism, which ultimately is part of an authoritarian or totalitarian government. And I refuse both. I cannot find in history any example of either a communist regime or a national socialist regime being good, and I absolutely reject the idea of authoritarian or totalitarian government being for the good of its people. So again, the alternative is not somewhere on the supposed left-right paradigm. The alternative is completely outside of it, and in my mind, it consists of individualism, free markets, constitutional republic, and the rule of law. So this is where I aim to influence people. This is my arguing. This is where I intend to open dialogue with people. When I have these discussions in person, this is how I try to influence them, and this is where I try to start a dialogue. And notice I say start a dialogue. I don't say force them into this individualistic group, because that's sort of an oxymoron to begin with. But to open dialogue and to say, hey, I want to know. I would really like to sit down with DJ Word and not over some, snipey kind of sarcastic Twitter thing, but I would like to sit down with him, and I would like to know, I'd like to ask him lots of good on other. And I'd like to ask him how he thinks there's lots of good in communism. I'd be very curious to understand his thinking behind that. Anyway, so this is my argument. I would encourage you not to fall for this whole false narrative that there's an alt-left and an alt-right, Democrat versus Republican. Really, at the end of the day, comes down to this authoritarian, totalitarian government versus a government of the people, by the people, for the people, that seeks to improve upon valuing individualism, free markets, constitutional republic, and the rule of law. Love to hear your comments, feedback. Let me know how I'm wrong. If you think that I'm wrong. And yeah, like I said, dialogue. Let's not demonize people. Let's try to open dialogue and try to understand their positions better. Have a great day.